Hey, what's going on guys? Mike here. Today we're going to be setting up a brand new shrimp tank here in the living room. We're going to be doing it a little bit different than the way I like to. We're going to be using earthworm castings and Akadama as substrate, as well as some other stuff that I haven't really used that much before. First, I want to let you guys know that AQUAPROS t-shirts, sweatshirts, and long sleeve t-shirts are now available. So I started a little campaign. I don't know how long it's going to last, but if you guys are interested in getting a shirt, great way to support the channel. There's a link down in the description, and I'd really appreciate it. Now with that out of the way, let's get into this tank. So I'm gonna flip the camera around and we'll talk about it. So this is a 15-gallon rimless tank, and this was actually my first shrimp tank here at this house. And it was just time to start a new one. I actually got some shrimp for my trip over to Aquarium Co-op, and I need a place to put them because I don't want to put them into the Avatar tank and mix them with my Sakura Reds. I ended up getting some orange Neocaradinas, and I think they're gonna look awesome when this tank is all said and done. So again, we're gonna be setting up this tank from start to finish. Let's go ahead and talk about the substrate, because I mean, you have a lot of choices when it comes to substrate. This is obviously gonna be a planted aquarium, but we're gonna do something different. We're gonna use Akadama as the primary substrate. Akadama is a clay, it's mined in Japan, and it's really interesting. It's an active substrate, just like ADA soil or fluval stratum, in that it has the ability to alter the water chemistry. It's going to lower pH, and it's also going to reduce KH and GH. The only big difference between Akadama and the other two active substrates that I mentioned is that it doesn't contain any organics. So this is a completely inorganic clay, but it's still really good. To help supplement some organics into it, we're going to use some earthworm castings as a bottom layer underneath this stuff. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us some good mineralized nutrients, as well as some organics that can break down to produce more inorganic nutrients that this stuff is going to retain and feed our plants. Akadama is not a new thing. People have been using it for years, specifically shrimp breeders, because it is a really good substrate for shrimp, again, because it has those active properties. We're also going to be using a bunch of this rock, and we're going to be using a lot of it. We're also going to be using a lot of this Akadama. I want a really tall scape, but this was sold to me as China rock, and it kind of looks like Suryu stone, but it has a lot more marbling in it. And it is similar to Suryu stone in that it does raise the pH. So we have a component here that will gradually raise pH. It's carbonate based. We have a component over here that's going to draw that concentration, at least of carbonate, down. So we have something that raises pH, we have something that lowers pH. And really, we don't know what our water parameters are going to be like, because I don't know how much rock I'm going to use. I'm going to try and use as much of this as possible, but we'll just have to wait and see, what our parameters end up being and sort of what they end up being stable at. So I've already washed out the Akadama really well. You need to do it. A lot of stuff comes off of this. This is the super hard Akadama. Here's the bag. And this is the stuff that you're probably going to want to use. I guess there's softer versions of it, but it's just a super hard-fired, hot-fired clay. And like I said, people have been using it as a substrate for a long time. It's tough to find online, at least a decent amount of it, but I ended up getting this, I think it's, like 17 liters, 14 liters. It ends up being cheaper than fluval stratum or ADA soil. You get a few extra liters for about the same price. So that's been pre-washed. We're gonna add this after we put in some earthworm castings. So we're using this instead of soil this time around as a little bit of an experiment. And in theory, it might even work better for us than soil, because it's a super labile source of carbon, meaning that it's gonna mineralize nitrogen and all the other compounds that our plants need to grow a lot faster compared to regular potting soil. So it's just an experiment. We'll have to see how it goes, but I'm excited because I think it's gonna work pretty well. So I'm just gonna spread that out, and I'm probably gonna put a little bit more in there. So as you can see here, sorry about the glare, I didn't put much of it in. It's probably a 1/4 of an inch. It's not even wet yet. So once we wet this down, which I'm about to do next, it should compact down to a very thin layer. And again, the point isn't to, create a big substrate that, big plant roots can grab a hold of and grow really well in, because we're not gonna be putting big plants in here. I'll get to that portion later. We'll talk about the plants that we're going to use in here, but you know, the goal is to just have something that will provide some nutrients to the Akadama, more so than just having what's in the water column be absorbed by the substrate. Now we're going to go ahead and add in a bunch of our Akadama. So this was just the stuff left over in the strainer. I'm just going to sprinkle it in, get a nice even layer over the top, and then I'm going to really mound it up in the back with the other bins I have here. So that is what we were able to make with our 14-liter bag, and I think that, you know, I'm just going to have to go with it. I wanted it to be a little bit more, but if we pull some of this back and then prop, you know, some rocks back here, we can probably build it even higher. And I know it looks like, you know, just a ton of this stuff, which it is, but it's going to be, I think it's going to look really good. It's just the style of the scape that I want to go for. So I'm going to get in here with some rocks, play around a little bit, see what I can't do. Hardscape, I think, is pretty much done for now, at least. So you can see we have a lot of the rock here. I tried to mount it up as high as I could, but if I really wanted to get like to the top of the tank, kind of like what I was thinking originally, I would need some more Akadama. Unfortunately, I only had the one bag. I have a few rocks left over, but I think that's looking pretty good. I don't know, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below how you think the new shrimp tank is looking so far. So now what we need to do is we need to fill the tank up. And you can see I already have the Phoenix light on here. We're also going to be adding a little HT30 heater, just something really simple. And the HOB, I have some new filter floss in there. We'll get some cycled media in there, and hopefully we'll be able to get the shrimp in here by tonight. I want to fill it up and then check the water parameters to make sure nothing too crazy is going on here, like this rock's not raising the pH too high. So let's go ahead and fill the tank up. So we got the tank all filled up now, and you probably noticed that I had to siphon out the water as I was bringing it in because the Akadama, even though it was still pre-rinsed pretty well by me, it was still producing a lot of dust. So we got it really clear now, and now it's time to plant the tank. And, you know, I have this really big piece of needleleaf java fern here that I wanted to use, but I don't think there's going to be room for it here in the scape. We'll try it out, but we don't want to, you know, cover up too much of this hardscape. I also have some Vesuvius, really cool sword plant with the spirally leaves on it. Want to put this in there somewhere, not 100% sure where. We also have a bunch of Nana Petites here that we can put in between the rocks, and you know, I'm going to need some type of carpeting plant, maybe some S. repens, not 100% sure. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that, but this is going to take a while. So we'll speed that up for you, and I'll get back to you when the tank is planted. We're done planting, guys, and you'll notice that I did add in a few more plants that I didn't mention before. So I put in a few Pogostemon Helpherize. We put in some moss kind of throughout some of the cracks here and on the sides just to fill things in a little bit. Not enough moss really, or not as much moss as I'd like for my shrimp, but hopefully it'll grow. Maybe I'll add some more as, you know, the scape develops. The other plant that I added, of course, was the S. repens. I tried to build a little carpet here. These stems don't look very good. They're pulled out of my 72, some of the leggier ones, and you know, we'll just kind of see how it goes. I don't, you know, I'm just hoping for the best on these plants, but we get, you know, CO2 and good light in here, and I think it'll carpet up real quick. Another plant that I added was this AR, and I'm not sure if it's AR mini or if it's regular AR. I think it is regular AR, and if that's true, Alternanthera rennicki, it is going to get really big, and this is not the right placement for it, but if it does turn out to be regular AR, I can just cut it back, cut it completely out, and try and put it in the background maybe. If I change my mind and want to swap out the Vesuvius, I could put it back there, or I could just get rid of it altogether. And, you know, if my carpet of S. repens is doing well, I can just fill that in, maybe even take that rock out. I'm just waiting for the water to heat up. The heater's back in the left corner, and I'm about to hook up the filter, but what I realized was that the intake was going to be too long. It was hitting the substrate in the back. So what I did was I just popped it off and cut a piece of filter sponge to fit over this, zip tied it on, and now we have no worries when it comes to the intake length. So I'm going to hook this up and, you know, hopefully get the tank cycling with that pre-cycled media. I'm going to pop in some filter pad that's been in one of my filters for a long time now, and then we should be able to add the shrimp. The last thing we want to do though is hook up CO2. So this is going to be a high-tech tank, or at least in an attempt at one, and for that I'm going to be using paintball CO2, but unfortunately I have to drive to the next city over to get it filled because my town doesn't have a place that fills up paintball CO2 tanks, which really sucks. So to complete this setup, we're gonna have to wait a couple days for me to get that, but don't worry, there's gonna be a bunch of follow-up videos to this tank build, and that's just the remaining piece. I'll probably just end up putting in a little diffuser in the back and keep it really simple. The orange neos have been acclimating to temperature up here for about an hour, and I just have my bucket with a net here. I'm gonna pour them in, and then we're gonna take the shrimp straight into the tank. I'm not gonna bother with doing any kind of drip acclimation because the total dissolved solids in this tank, along with pH and the other water parameters, are very similar to what Corey has, and that is where these orange neos came from. Corey was nice enough to hook me up with some of these before I came back, and we set up the new tank just for them. All right, guys, so fast forward to the next day. All the orange neos are hanging out, looking really good here in the front of the tank. I just fed them. They're probably still working on some of the food down there. But I did make a couple changes to the tanks, but before I talk about that, I wanted to also mention that earlier in the video, I mentioned that I wasn't going to add these shrimp until I tested the water parameters to make sure that the pH, KH, GH were, you know, not totally crazy because of the rocks and the substrate. And upon testing the pH, GH, KH, and I also did a little ammonia check just to make sure that, you know, the little amount of earthworm castings didn't leach anything out to the water. That yielded totally zero. And again here, the second day, again, totally zero. And I expected that because we added such a small amount. So that checked out. pH came in at about 7, so 0.2 units lower than what comes out of my tap. And the GH and KH was actually the same as the tap. So the GH came in at 4 and the KH came in at 2. So everything I think is doing really good in here parameter wise, and you know, we'll be monitoring that daily as the tank goes through this first week just to make sure that nothing crazy happens. I also added in a few different plants. I took out the Vesuvius in the back and replaced it with tall hairgrass, just the standard regular hairgrass. I also put in some Bucephalandra right here in this corner. I don't know what species it is, it's just a random Bus. And what else did we add? I think that's it. I swapped out a couple of the petites, or moved a couple of them around. I also added a little bit more moss, so some more Java moss in the back, and some more over here, give the shrimp a little bit more to hang out on. And other than that, you know, the tank is pretty much done. So we have some inoculated media. I put in some lava rocks from my other HOB in there. But the big experiment with this tank is not just the substrate combination. I also want to check out the light. So this is a Phoenix Planted Plus 24/7. It's the older model. And what I want to do is I want to run this tank through the 24/7 mode. So right now it's kind of the middle of the day, so the fixture is just, you know, at one of its brightest settings. But I've never really used the 24/7 mode, and I don't know anybody that's actually used it more than just a novelty thing. So I kind of want to see what it can do. So we're going to just run it on 24/7 mode, and I'll get a, you know, some type of a review of it all for you guys. And I think, you know, at least somebody out there is curious as to, you know, if that mode actually can render good plant growth. So we'll see what happens. So yeah, guys, I think that's gonna wrap it up for, I don't know, the living room shrimp tank build. Help me out here. If you want to name the tank, drop a suggestion in the comments below. I'm gonna be thinking about it a little bit. I don't really know what the theme is, or if there even is a theme in here. I'm excited to see what your thoughts are. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button, and as always, thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one.